The steam locomotive wheezed to a stop at Mercy's Bend station, belching black smoke into the crisp Wyoming air. Clara Whitmore pressed her gloved hand against the frost-covered window, watching the small frontier town materialize through the glass. After 3 days of travel from Boston, her joints ached and her traveling dress hung heavy with dust, but it was the weight in her chest that troubled her most. She gathered her carpetbag and stepped onto the wooden platform, immediately feeling the bite of mountain wind through her wool coat. The other passengers dispersed quickly, leaving her standing alone beneath the station's weathered sign. A few townspeople lingered nearby, their eyes sliding over her with undisguised curiosity. She recognized the look. It was the same scrutiny reserved for mail-order brides. Women who arrived with nothing but hope and desperation packed in equal measure. Mrs. Whitmore. The voice was low and rough, like gravel scraped over stone. Clara turned to find a tall man standing in the shadows of the depot building. Samuel Hartley looked exactly as she'd imagined from his brief letters. Broad-shouldered, weather-beaten, with dark hair that needed cutting and a jaw that hadn't seen a razor in days. But his eyes surprised her. They were gray as winter sky, and held a grief so profound it made her own sorrows seem small. "Mr. Hartley." She extended her hand, a gesture that seemed to catch him off guard. After a moment's hesitation, he took it briefly, his calloused palm rough against her kid gloves. "Sam," he corrected, though the word came out stiff, as if he hadn't used it in a long time. "Wagons this way." He took her trunk without ceremony and led her to a sturdy buckboard hitched with 2 bay horses. Clara noticed how the animals shifted nervously at his approach, how he gentled them with a touch that spoke of long familiarity. He helped her onto the bench seat with impersonal efficiency, then climbed up beside her. They left Mercy's Bend in silence, the wagon wheels creaking over the rutted road. Clara pulled her shawl tighter as they headed north, toward the mountains that loomed like sleeping giants against the pale sky. The landscape was nothing like Boston, raw, endless, beautiful in its desolation. She watched Sam from the corner of her eye, noting the rigid set of his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the reins with unnecessary force. "How long to the ranch?" she finally asked, needing to break the oppressive quiet. 4 hours, maybe 5. Road gets rough past Devil's Creek." His voice carried no warmth, no welcome. Clara wondered if he regretted his advertisement in the Matrimonial Times, regretted the widow from back east who'd answered it with carefully penned lies about seeking a new beginning. If he knew the truth about the bruises that had barely faded, about the fire that still haunted her dreams, about the small grave she'd left behind, he'd turn this wagon around without a second thought. The road climbed steadily, winding through stands of lodgepole pine and across meadows where snow still clung to shadowed hollows. They forded Devil's Creek, the icy water rushing over smooth stones, and Clara gripped the seat as the wagon lurched and swayed. Sam navigated it all with grim competence, never speaking except to calm the horses. As afternoon shadows lengthened, they crested a ridge, and Clara got her first glimpse of the Hartley Ranch. The house sat in a valley between 2 ridges, a sprawling log structure that seemed to have grown from the earth itself. It was larger than she'd expected. 2 stories with a wide porch and windows that reflected the dying light like blind eyes. Smoke curled from one of 3 chimneys, the only sign of life in the gathering dusk. "It's beautiful," she said, because something needed to be said. Sam's jaw tightened. "It's big, too big for one person." The implication hung between them. Too big for him alone, too full of ghosts. Clara had seen the same look in her own mirror, the hollow gaze of someone living in spaces meant for 2. They descended into the valley as darkness crept across the land. The horses picked up their pace, eager for home, but Sam held them to a steady walk. As they drew closer, Clara noticed details that made her uneasy. Curtains drawn tight across every window, a garden gate hanging crooked on its hinges, the porch steps worn smooth in the center, as if by the passage of many feet, yet the sides thick with undisturbed dust. Sam pulled up in front of the house and set the brake. For a moment, neither moved. Then he climbed down and came around to help her descend, this close, She could smell wood smoke and leather on him, see the lines that grief had etched around his eyes. "Welcome to the Double H," he said, the words flat as pressed flowers. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing a thin woman in a faded calico dress. She looked to be near 60, with steel-gray hair pulled back severely and eyes that darted between Clara and Sam like a nervous bird's. "This is Mrs. Patterson," Sam said. "She comes days to cook and clean. Not much cleaning needed." "Mrs." Patterson said, her voice carrying an odd undertone. "House keeps itself mostly." She looked at Clara with something like pity. "You must be tired. Dear, I've made up the blue room." "The blue room?" Sam's voice sharpened. "She'll take the room at the back. But Mr. Hartley, the blue room's proper for—" "The back room, Mrs. Patterson." The housekeeper pressed her lips together but nodded. Clara followed her inside, trying not to notice how Sam remained on the porch, as if reluctant to enter his own home. The interior was grand in a rustic way. Heavy timber beams, a massive stone fireplace, furniture that spoke of quality brought at great expense from back east. But everything was shrouded in white sheets, like a house in mourning. The air smelled of beeswax and something else, something floral and cloying that made Clara's stomach turn. "This way, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, leading her up a staircase that groaned under their weight. The hallway stretched long and dark. Doors closed tight on either side. They passed one door painted blue, and Clara saw Mrs. Patterson's hand tremble as they hurried past. The back room proved small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and single window overlooking the ranch buildings. It had the feeling of servants' quarters, not a room meant for the lady of the house. "I'll bring hot water," Mrs. Patterson said. She paused at the door, seeming to wrestle with something. "Mrs. Whitmore, you seem like a nice young woman, maybe too nice for—" She glanced down the hall toward the blue door. "Just be careful. This house has its ways." Before Clara could ask what she meant, the woman hurried away. Clara unpacked slowly, placing her few possessions in the pine dresser. Her fingers lingered on the daguerreotype tucked between her petticoats, an image she shouldn't have kept but couldn't bear to leave behind. She hid it beneath her underthings and closed the drawer firmly. Dinner was a stilted affair in the large dining room. Sam appeared long enough to push food around his plate, while Clara attempted conversation that died in the space between them. Mrs. Patterson served in nervous silence, the clink of china unnaturally loud, through the windows. Clara watched darkness swallow the valley whole. "I sleep out in the barn loft," Sam announced suddenly, pushing back from the table. "Been that way for a while now. House is yours after dark." "That's not necessary." "It is." His tone brooked no argument. "Mrs. Patterson leaves at sundown. You'll find what you need in the kitchen come morning." He left without another word. Clara heard the front door close, saw his lantern bobbing across the yard toward the barn. Mrs. Patterson cleared the dishes with hurried efficiency. "Lock your door at night," she whispered as she gathered her things. "And no matter what you hear, don't go wandering. She doesn't like—" The woman caught herself, shook her head. "Just stay in your room." Then Clara was alone. She built up the fire in the great room, trying to chase away the chill that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. The house settled around her with creaks and sighs, sounds that might have been comforting in another place, but here felt watchful, waiting. She found a lamp and explored cautiously, discovering a kitchen well stocked but dusty, a library where books stood like soldiers behind glass, rooms and rooms of furniture draped in white. The blue door drew her despite herself. She stood before it, hand raised to knock. Absurd, since no one could be inside. The doorknob was silver, tarnished black around the edges, just as her fingers touched the cold metal. The fire in the hearth below guttered and died. Clara jerked back. The sudden darkness pressed against her like a living thing. Then, soft as silk, came the sound of laughter. A woman's laugh, low and knowing, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Clara fled to her room and locked the door with shaking hands. She undressed in the dark, afraid to light a lamp, and crawled beneath covers that smelled of lavender and age. Outside, wind keened through the valley, rattling windows and testing doors. But beneath the wind, she thought she heard footsteps pacing the hall, slow, deliberate, pausing longest outside her door. She lay rigid until dawn, wondering what she'd gotten herself into, wondering if the ghosts she'd fled in Boston had simply followed her here in a different form. When pale light finally seeped through her window, she rose and dressed quickly, eager to escape the confines of the room. The house stood silent in the morning light, dust motes dancing in sunbeams as if nothing strange had happened. But as Clara descended the stairs, she noticed something that made her heart skip. On the blue door, the tarnished doorknob now gleamed bright as new silver, and beneath the door's edge, she could swear she smelled roses blooming in the dead of winter. Clara rose before dawn, determined to prove herself useful. The kitchen stood cold and silent, but she soon had coffee brewing and biscuits in the oven. Through the window, she watched Sam emerge from the barn, his breath clouding in the frigid air. He moved with the careful precision of a man who'd learned to navigate his world alone. When he entered through the back door, stamping snow from his boots, he stopped short at the sight of her working at the stove. "You're up early," he said, neither praise nor criticism in his tone. "I'm accustomed to it." She poured him coffee without asking how he took it. Black seemed a safe assumption. "Mrs. Patterson mentioned there's mending needs doing." He accepted the cup, wrapping his hands around its warmth. "In the parlor, but you don't need to." "I do." The words came out sharper than intended. "I didn't come here to be idle. Mr. Hartley." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. He nodded once and retreated to the table, where he ate in his customary silence. Clara busied herself with cleaning, aware of his presence like a weight in the room. After breakfast, she found the mending basket overflowing with shirts and work pants, evidence of a bachelor's neglect. She settled by the parlor window where the light was best, needle flying through worn fabric. The repetitive motion soothed her, as it had during those long nights in Boston when stitching was the only thing keeping her hands from shaking. Mrs. Patterson arrived at 9, eyeing Clara's handiwork with approval tinged by wariness. "You've a fine hand," the older woman said. She had one too, could embroider like an angel. Clara's needle paused. "Mrs. Hartley?" "Eliza, yes." "Mrs." Patterson glanced toward the stairs. "Spent hours in that blue room with her needlework. Said the light was perfect there. What happened to her?" The question slipped out before Clara could stop it. "Mrs." Patterson's face closed like a slammed door. "Mr. Hartley didn't tell you. Only that she passed 2 years ago." "Passed." The woman tested the word like spoiled milk. "I suppose that's one way to put it." She bustled toward the kitchen. "I'll start the noon meal." Clara returned to her mending, but her concentration was broken. Through the window, she could see Sam working with a young horse in the corral, his movements patient and sure. It was hard to reconcile this gentle handling with whatever dark history the house held. The days settled into a pattern. Clara rose early, prepared breakfast, then threw herself into the neglected household tasks. She beat dust from carpets, polished tarnished silver, scraped years of soot from lamp chimneys. Sam appeared for meals but otherwise kept his distance, disappearing into the vast landscape of the ranch. But at night, the house transformed. Doors she'd closed tight stood ajar. Items moved. A thimble left on the mantel appeared on the kitchen table. A book carefully shelved was found open on a chair. The scent of roses grew stronger, cloying, though no such flowers bloomed within 50 miles. Clara began to understand why Sam slept in the barn. The townspeople proved no more welcoming than the house. When she accompanied Mrs. Patterson to Mercy's Bend for supplies, conversations died at her approach. Women clutched their shawls tighter and hurried past. In the general store, she overheard whispers. Third one he's brought here. Won't last any longer than the others. Eliza won't stand for it. Never has. The shopkeeper, Mr. Donnelly, at least had the grace to look embarrassed as he filled her order. Don't mind them, ma'am. Folk here are set in their ways. The others, Clara said quietly. There were others before me? He busied himself with wrapping her purchases. 2 nice girls, both of them. First one lasted 3 weeks before she took the stage back east. Second made it near a month. He leaned closer, voice dropping. Said they couldn't sleep for the crying at night. Said things, moved. Clara thought of the silver doorknob, polished by invisible hands. And they believed it was Mrs. Hartley, Eliza. She was particular about that house, prideful. Wouldn't cotton to another woman taking her place? He handed her the parcels. But you seem made of sterner stuff. Boston ladies usually are. That evening, Clara found Sam in the barn, doctoring a horse's split hoof. She stood in the doorway, watching him work by lantern light, gathering courage. Why didn't you tell me about the others? His hand stilled on the horse's leg. What others? The other mail-order brides, the ones who left. He straightened slowly, not meeting her eyes. Didn't see the point. You're here now. And if I leave too, then you leave. His voice was flat, resigned. I won't stop you. Clara stepped closer, into the circle of lamplight. Is that what you want, for me to leave? He finally looked at her then, and she saw not indifference but a bone-deep weariness. What I want stopped mattering 2 years ago, when Eliza died. His jaw tightened. When Eliza... He broke off, ran a hand through his hair. Yes. The townspeople say she haunts the house, that she drives other women away. The townspeople say a lot of things, but his eyes shifted away from hers. And you, what do you say? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I say a house can hold on to things, memories, anger, guilt. Call it haunting if you want, but it amounts to the same. Clara pulled her shawl tighter, suddenly cold despite the warmth from the horses. What does the house want? To be left alone, same as me. But even as he said it, Clara caught the lie in his voice. Whatever Sam Hartley wanted, it wasn't to be alone. She'd seen it in the way he lingered at the kitchen door each morning, in the way his eyes followed her when he thought she wasn't looking. He was a man drowning in isolation who'd forgotten how to reach for shore. That night, the disturbances escalated. Clara woke to find her bedroom door wide open, cold air flooding the room. In the hall, a single candle burned on a table that hadn't been there before. The flame flickered without any draft, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Against every instinct, Clara picked up the candle and moved down the hall. The blue door stood open, revealing a room frozen in time, an elegant 4-poster bed draped in midnight velvet, a vanity table cluttered with crystal bottles and silver brushes, photographs in gilt frames, all of the same woman, dark-haired, beautiful, with eyes that seemed to follow Clara's movement. On the bed lay a dress, carefully spread as if waiting for its owner, wedding white, with pearl buttons and layers of Irish lace. Clara reached out to touch it, and the fabric crumbled to dust beneath her fingers. The candle guttered and died. In the darkness, Clara heard it clearly, weeping, soft and broken, coming from everywhere at once. She stumbled backward, fleeing to her room, but the crying followed. She pressed pillows over her ears, but the sound burrowed deeper, not in her ears, but in her bones. By morning, her nerves were shattered. She found Sam already in the kitchen, staring at something on the table. Her mending basket sat there, but instead of the careful repairs she'd made, every piece lay in shreds, methodically destroyed. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't know how. It's not your fault. His voice was gentle, the first warmth she'd heard from him. This is what she does, what the house does. I should have warned you better. Tell me what happened to her, please. Sam sank into a chair, suddenly looking older than his 30-odd years. There was a fire. She was in the blue room when it started. The door. The door was locked from the inside. By the time I broke it down, the smoke had already... He stopped, unable to continue. You blame yourself. Wouldn't you? She was my wife. I was supposed to protect her. Clara thought of another fire, another failure, a small body she couldn't reach in time. Sometimes protection isn't possible. Sometimes things just happen. He looked at her sharply, hearing something in her tone. You speak from experience. She turned away, busying herself with gathering the ruined mending. We all have our ghosts. Mr. Hartley. That afternoon, a Chinook wind blew through the valley, unseasonably warm. Clara escaped the oppressive house for the barn, where she found comfort in the simple task of feeding chickens and gathering eggs. Sam appeared as she was scattering grain, watching her with an unreadable expression. You're not what I expected, he said finally. What did you expect? Someone softer, weaker, someone who'd run at the first sign of trouble. Clara smiled without humor. I've done my running. It doesn't solve anything. He stepped closer, and she caught that scent of wood smoke and leather again. What were you running from? The question she'd dreaded and known would come. Clara set down the feed bucket, choosing her words carefully. A marriage that became a prison, a husband who believed wives should be silent and obedient. When I wasn't, she unconsciously rubbed her wrist where the scars hid beneath her sleeve. He hurt you. It wasn't a question. Until I learned to be quiet, to be invisible, to be what he wanted. The words tasted like ash. But even that wasn't enough in the end. Sam's hands clenched at his sides. Where is he now? Dead. The word came out flat. There was a fire. I got out. He didn't. She waited for the questions, the suspicions. But Sam only nodded slowly. I'm sorry. No one should have to live that way. They stood there in the dusty barn, two damaged people recognizing something broken in each other. Clara felt the dangerous pull of understanding, of shared pain. It would be so easy to step into his arms, to seek comfort in solid warmth instead of ghostly cold. A crash from the house shattered the moment. They rushed inside to find the kitchen in chaos, dishes smashed, chairs overturned, flour coating everything like snow. Written in the spilled flour. In elegant script, get out. Clara stared at the message, anger suddenly flooding through her. She'd fled one tyrant only to face another, even if this one was dead. No, she said aloud, her voice ringing clear. I won't be driven away, not again. The house seemed to hold its breath. Sam touched her arm, whether in warning or support. She couldn't tell. That night, she didn't retreat to her room. Instead, she sat by the dying fire in the parlor, mending basket beside her, calmly repairing what had been destroyed. Let the house rage. Let Eliza's spirit tear and break and howl. Clara had survived worse than a jealous ghost. As midnight approached, the disturbances began again, doors slamming, furniture scraping across floors, that omnipresent weeping. But Clara kept her hand steady on the needle, each stitch an act of defiance. She was done running. Whatever this house held, whatever secrets Sam carried, she would face them. She didn't notice when the sound stopped, when peace settled over the house like dust. But when Sam appeared in the doorway at dawn, having spent a sleepless night in the barn, he found her still there, asleep in the chair, a shirt perfectly mended across her lap, looking for all the world like she belonged. The morning after Clara's defiant vigil, Sam surprised her with an invitation. Thought you might like to see more of the ranch, he said over breakfast, not quite meeting her eyes. The house can wait a day. Clara set down her coffee cup, studying his weathered face. Since finding her asleep in the parlor, something had shifted in his demeanor, a slight softening around the edges, like ice beginning its slow thaw. I'd like that, she said simply. They saddled two horses in companionable silence. Sam had chosen a gentle mare for her, a bay named Buttercup with kind eyes and steady temperament. He swung into his own saddle with the easy grace of a man more at home on horseback than on foot. The valley opened before them, vast and pristine under a crystalline sky. Snow still capped the distant peaks, But here in the lower elevations, spring fought for foothold. They rode along a creek swollen with snowmelt, following a trail worn by years of use. "This land's been in my family 40 years, Sam said as they climbed toward a ridge. "My father came out after the war, looking for something clean, something untouched by all that dying. Did he find it? For a while. Then the cholera took him and my mother both. I was 15. Clara guided her mare around a fallen log, processing this glimpse into his past. "You've been alone a long time, not always alone." The words came reluctantly. "I married Eliza when I was 22. She brought life to the place. Laughter, music, for 8 years. This land felt like home instead of just territory." They crested the ridge, and Clara caught her breath. The valley spread below them like a painting, the ranch buildings toy small in the distance, the mountains standing guard on all sides. Sam dismounted and helped her down, his hands lingering a moment at her waist. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Eliza loved this spot, called it her cathedral. Pain flickered across his features. "Haven't been back since?" Clara touched his arm gently. "Tell me about her. The real woman, not the ghost." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, like drawing poison from a wound, the words came. She was the daughter of a judge in Denver. Cultured, educated, everything I wasn't. When she agreed to marry me, I couldn't believe my luck. Thought I'd somehow fooled her into thinking I was worthy. They sat on a flat boulder, horses grazing nearby. The sun climbed higher, warming the rock beneath them. First years were good. She threw herself into ranch life, learned to ride and rope, charmed the hands and the townspeople alike. But after the third miscarriage, he paused, swallowing hard. Something broke in her. She started spending all her time in that blue room, barely eating, barely speaking. Said the baby's spirits visited her there. Clara's heart clenched, remembering her own lost child. Grief can twist a person into shapes they don't recognize. I tried to help, but everything I did seemed wrong. She accused me of not loving her, of wanting her to die so I could remarry and have sons. Started locking herself in that room for days. Then came the night of the fire. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I smelled smoke, ran upstairs. The door was locked. It had never locked from inside before. But she'd had a bolt installed without telling me. I could hear her in there, not screaming, just laughing. By the time I broke through, the smoke was so thick I couldn't see. Found her by the window. She'd made no attempt to escape. "Oh, Sam." Clara took his hand without thinking, feeling the calluses and scars of a life built on hard work. "The doctor said the smoke killed her quick, but I've always wondered. Did she plan it? Was it her final way to punish me for some imagined betrayal?" He looked at their joined hands with surprise, but didn't pull away. "Now she, or the house, or my guilt, whatever you want to call it, won't let anyone else in. Maybe it's not about keeping others out," Clara said softly. "Maybe it's about keeping you trapped." He turned to her then, gray eyes searching. "You're not afraid?" "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I've learned fear's just another cage. I won't live in cages anymore." A golden eagle circled overhead, riding thermals with effortless grace. Clara tilted her face to the sun, feeling truly warm for the first time since arriving. When she opened her eyes, Sam was watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "You never told me about the fire that freed you," he said. Clara's hand tightened involuntarily on his. "My husband, Thomas, was a merchant in Boston, respectable, wealthy, charming in public, in private." She touched her throat, where bruises had once bloomed like dark flowers. "He had very specific ideas about a wife's duties. When I failed to give him children, when I dared to have opinions, he made his disappointment known." Sam's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her speak. "That last night, he'd been drinking, more violent than usual. He locked me in our bedroom while he went to his study. I could smell the smoke before I saw it. He'd knocked over a lamp in his stupor. I screamed for help, beat on the door until my hands bled. The servants were gone for the night. No one heard. She stopped, lost in memory. Sam squeezed her hand gently, anchoring her to the present. The fire weakened the door enough for me to break through. The house was an inferno. I made it to the nursery, the room I'd prepared for a baby who came too early, who lived just 3 hours. I couldn't leave without, but the smoke was too thick. The floor gave way. Tears ran down her cheeks, unchecked. I saved myself, left my baby's memory to burn with everything else. What kind of mother does that? A living one, Sam said firmly. You couldn't save what was already gone, Clara, any more than I could save Eliza from her own demons. She looked at him through blurred vision. We're a pair, aren't we? Both haunted by fires we couldn't prevent. Maybe that's why you're still here, why the house hasn't driven you away. He raised their joined hands, studied them as if they were a puzzle. Maybe it takes someone who understands ghosts to face them down. Thunder rumbled across the valley, though the sky remained clear. Sam frowned, scanning the horizon. Storm coming fast. We need to go. They mounted quickly, but the weather moved faster. Black clouds boiled over the mountains like an angry sea. The first fat raindrop struck as they descended the ridge trail, quickly becoming a deluge. Lightning split the sky, thunder following close enough to feel in their bones. Buttercup shied at a lightning strike, nearly unseating Clara. Sam grabbed the mare's bridle, steadying her. There's a line shack nearby, he shouted over the storm. We'll wait it out there. They fought through curtains of rain, finally reaching a small cabin tucked against a hillside. Sam practically lifted Clara from the saddle, hurrying her inside while he secured the horses under a lean-to. The cabin held only basics: a narrow cot, a pot-bellied stove, supplies for cowboys caught in bad weather. Clara stood shivering, her riding habit soaked through. Sam burst in moments later, equally drenched. Fire, he muttered, kneeling at the stove. His hands shook slightly as he struck matches, from cold. Clara told herself. Nothing more. Soon warmth filled the tiny space. Sam found a blanket in a trunk, wrapping it around Clara's shoulders. Their eyes met in the flickering light, and suddenly the cabin felt too small, too intimate. You're cold too, Clara said, opening the blanket in invitation. He hesitated, that careful distance he maintained wavering. Then another thunder crack shook the cabin, and he stepped into the circle of her arms. The blanket barely covered them both, forcing them close. Clara could feel his heartbeat, rapid as her own. Clara, he said, her name a question and warning both. She answered by tilting her face up to his. Their lips met tentatively. Two people who'd forgotten the language of tenderness, relearning it together. The kiss deepened, weeks of loneliness and longing condensing into this moment. His hands tangled in her wet hair. Hers clutched his shoulders like anchors. Lightning illuminated them in stark tableau, two souls seeking shelter from more than the storm. Then Sam wrenched himself away, breathing hard. I can't. He pressed his forehead to hers, eyes closed. You don't know what you're risking. What she might do if she thinks, I don't care what she thinks, Clara said fiercely. She's dead. Sam, we're alive. Doesn't that count for something? You don't understand. The last woman who kissed me. He broke off, pain etching deeper lines in his face. What happened to her? She fell down the stairs that night, broke her neck. The second mail-order bride? Sarah, just 22 years old. His voice was hollow. I never touched her, barely spoke to her, but Eliza knew. Somehow, she always knew what was in my heart. Clara cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Then she knew you were lonely, that you're a good man who deserves love. If that threatens her, it's her failing, not yours. You're not afraid? I told you, I'm done being afraid. But even as she said it, that cloying rose scent drifted through the cabin. Impossible in this bare shelter miles from the house. The temperature dropped despite the stove's heat. Sam pulled her close again, protective now rather than passionate. She's strongest at the house. Out here, it's just echo, memory. They held each other as the storm raged, neither willing to break contact. Clara felt safe in his arms, safer than she'd felt in years. But she also felt watched, judged by eyes that saw through walls and distance. When the rain finally stopped, late afternoon sun broke through dissipating clouds. They rode back mostly in silence, both aware they'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. As the ranch buildings came into view, Clara saw Mrs. Patterson's buggy in the yard. The housekeeper met them at the door, face pale with worry. "Thank the Lord you're back. I came to start supper and found—" She gestured helplessly. The parlor looked like a battlefield. Every piece of furniture overturned, curtains shredded, books torn from shelves. But it was the wall that made Clara gasp, scratch deep into the wood, over and over in increasingly frantic script. "Mine, mine, mine, mine." Sam's arm came around Clara's waist, steady and warm. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "I'll take you to town tonight. This has gone too far." "No." Clara stepped away from him, moving into the destroyed room. "I told you, I'm done running." "Clara, please. I couldn't bear if something happened to you too." She turned to face him, chin raised. "Then help me fight her. Help me take back your home, our home." Mrs. Patterson made a small sound. Sam stood frozen, storm clouds gathering in his eyes, but Clara saw something else there too, hope, fragile as spring ice. "Our home," he repeated. "If you'll have me, not as some mail-order convenience, but as a true wife, a partner." She took a breath, gambling everything. "I'm falling in love with you. Samuel Hartley. I won't let a jealous spirit have the last word on that." The house groaned around them, walls creaking ominously. A picture frame flew from the mantel, shattering at Clara's feet. She didn't flinch. Sam crossed to her in 2 strides, pulling her against him. "You brave, stubborn, magnificent woman." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "God help us both." Mrs. Patterson cleared her throat. I'll come back tomorrow." But Clara caught her arm. "No, stay for supper. We eat together tonight, in this house, like normal people." The older woman looked between them, then nodded slowly. "I'll set the table." As she bustled away, Sam held Clara close. "You know this is just the beginning. She'll fight harder now. Then we fight back harder." Clara looked up at him, fierce and determined. "She had her time with you. This is mine." Thunder rumbled again, though the sky had cleared. In the destroyed parlor, rose petals materialized from nowhere, swirling in an unfelt wind before crumbling to ash. The battle lines were drawn. Clara had claimed her ground. Now she had to hold it. The days following Clara's declaration of war against Eliza's spirit brought an escalation that tested everyone's nerves. Furniture moved constantly. Doors slammed with violent force, and that omnipresent rose scent grew thick enough to choke. But Clara refused to yield, meeting each supernatural tantrum with stubborn determination. She began by reclaiming the blue room. "You can't be serious," Sam protested as she stood before the door with a bucket of soapy water and rags. "That room hasn't been opened properly since Eliza died in it," Clara finished, "which is exactly why it needs to be cleaned. Ghosts feed on stagnation. Sam, on things left to rot in darkness." Mrs. Patterson crossed herself. "I'll help," she said, though her voice trembled. About time someone stood up to her. Together, they entered Eliza's sanctuary. Dust motes danced in shafts of light through windows Clara insisted on opening despite the cold. The room exhaled stale air and old sorrow. "We'll start with the curtains," Clara announced. Pulling down the heavy drapes, sunlight flooded in, revealing the full extent of the preserved shrine. Eliza's clothes still hung in the wardrobe, her perfume bottles arranged just so on the vanity, the bed still bearing the burn marks from that fatal fire. As they worked, strange things happened. The water in Clara's bucket turned red as blood, then cleared when she refused to stop scrubbing. Eliza's photograph fell repeatedly from the wall, the glass cracking in a spiderweb pattern. Once, Clara felt invisible hands grip her shoulders, trying to push her toward the window. She braced herself and kept cleaning. She was beautiful, Clara said, studying one of the intact photographs. Eliza gazed out with dark eyes that held secrets and sorrows. She was, Sam agreed from the doorway. He'd been drawn by the commotion, unable to stay away despite his clear discomfort. Beautiful and broken. Clara set the photograph aside gently. I'm not trying to erase her, Sam, just the pain she left behind. There's a difference. That night, Clara had the most vivid dream yet. She stood in the blue room, but it was different, newer, alive with warmth. Eliza sat at the vanity, brushing her long dark hair. You think you've won something, Eliza said without turning. Her voice was cultured, with a slight musical accent. You think love will save him, save you both. I think love is worth fighting for, Clara replied, surprised she could speak in this dream. Eliza's reflection smiled coldly. I thought that too. Fought so hard I burned everything down rather than lose. She turned then, and Clara gasped. Half of Eliza's face was beautiful still, the other half charred and ruined. Is that what you want, to love him so fiercely you destroy him? That wasn't love. That was possession. And what's the difference? Eliza rose, gliding closer. When you've lost 3 babies, when you feel him pulling away, when you know he looks at you and sees only failure. Tell me then about the difference between love and desperation. Clara's heart ached with unexpected sympathy. I've lost a child too. I know that pain. 1 child. Eliza's voice turned bitter. Try 3. Try feeling life leave your body 3 times while your husband grows more distant with each loss. Try watching him look at other women in town and knowing he's calculating how many sons they might give him. Sam wouldn't. Sam is a man. They all want the same things in the end. Eliza circled Clara like a predator. But you know that, don't you? Your husband taught you well. The bruises fade, but the lessons remain. Clara flinched but held her ground. My husband was a monster. Sam is nothing like him. No? Then why does he sleep in the barn? Why does he flinch when you touch him unexpectedly? Why does he carry such guilt if he's truly innocent? The dream shattered as Clara woke gasping. The blue room's door stood open, though she'd locked it before bed. Inside, every surface was covered in frost, despite the warm night. Written in the ice on the mirror, he's mine. Clara rose and closed the door firmly. No, she said aloud. He's his own, as am I. That's what you never understood. The next morning brought a new crisis. Sam's prize stallion, a black Arabian named Tempest, was found loose with deep scratches along his flanks. The stall door hung off its hinges, destroyed from the inside out. Mountain cat, maybe. Jake, the ranch foreman, suggested doubtfully, though I've never seen one bold enough to enter a closed barn. Sam ran his hands over the wounds, face grim. These aren't claw marks. They're too precise, too deliberate. Clara knew what he was thinking. The attacks were moving beyond the house, targeting what Sam loved. She made a decision. Mrs. Patterson, I need you to go to town, find Pastor Williams and anyone else who might know about dealing with the restless spirits. The housekeeper paled. You mean an exorcism? I mean whatever it takes to bring peace to this house. Sam caught her arm as Mrs. Patterson hurried off. Clara, you don't know what you're stirring up. Eliza always hated the church, refused to attend after the second miscarriage. If you bring a pastor here, then maybe that's exactly what we need to do. She covered his hand with hers. Trust me. That afternoon, while Sam tended to Tempest, Clara found something that changed everything. Hidden behind a loose board in the blue room closet was a packet of letters tied with a faded ribbon. Love letters, but not from Sam. They were signed, Your Devoted Michael, and spoke of passionate meetings, of plans to run away together, of a love that couldn't be contained by marriage vows. The dates matched the months before Eliza's death. Clara sat on the cleaned floor, piecing together a different story than the one she'd believed. Eliza hadn't been a devoted wife driven mad by loss. She'd been a woman planning to leave, whose lover had apparently abandoned her at the crucial moment. The final letter, dated just a week before the fire, was different. I cannot continue this deception. My conscience won't allow it. You must reconcile with your husband or leave honestly. I won't be party to further sin. Forgive me. Found something interesting? Clara jumped. Sam stood in the doorway, expression unreadable. I'm sorry, she began. I wasn't trying to pry. I know about the letters. His voice was flat. Found them after she died. Michael Brennan, the bank manager's son. Married now. 3 children. Sits in the front pew every Sunday like butter wouldn't melt. You never confronted him. What would be the point? Eliza was gone. The truth would only hurt more people. He sat beside her on the floor, suddenly looking exhausted. I failed her long before she turned to him. After the 3rd miscarriage, I couldn't watch her sink deeper into grief. I threw myself into ranch work, stayed away longer, spoke less. I abandoned her as surely as he did. You were grieving too, Clara said gently. That's no excuse. I was her husband. I should have been stronger. He looked at the letters in her hands. She started the fire herself. I have always known that. The question that haunts me is whether she meant to die or just wanted to hurt me one last time. Clara leaned against his shoulder. Maybe both, maybe neither. Pain makes us do terrible things. They sat in companionable silence until footsteps on the stairs announced visitors. Mrs. Patterson appeared with Pastor Williams, a steady older man with kind eyes, and, surprisingly, 2 other women from town, the doctor's wife and the schoolteacher. Mrs. Hartley, the pastor said, then corrected himself. I apologize. Mrs. Whitmore. Mrs. Patterson explained the situation. These ladies have some experience with troubled houses. The doctor's wife, Mrs. Chen, stepped forward. My grandmother dealt with restless spirits in San Francisco. Sometimes understanding is stronger than exorcism. The schoolteacher, Miss Morgan, nodded. The Hartley Ranch has been a shadow over this valley too long. If you're willing to face it, we're willing to help. Clara felt a surge of gratitude. What do we do? First, we gather everything that was hers. Mrs. Chen instructed. Not to destroy, to honor. The dead grow angry when they feel forgotten. They spent the afternoon collecting Eliza's belongings with care and respect. Her clothes, her needlework, her photographs and letters, all arranged in the parlor like offerings. Even Sam participated, though his hands shook as he added items he'd hidden in the barn. A music box, a book of poetry, a dried flower pressed between its pages. As dusk fell, they lit candles throughout the room. Pastor Williams opened his Bible but didn't read. Instead, he spoke simply. Eliza Hartley, we acknowledge your pain, your loss, your presence in this house you loved. The candles flickered wildly. That familiar rose scent intensified. Mrs. Chen stepped forward. We honor your memory, but your time here has passed. Your pain doesn't have to continue. The temperature plummeted. Frost spread across windows. A low moaning filled the air, growing louder until it became an anguished wail. The candles extinguished simultaneously, plunging them into darkness. Then Clara heard it, not the angry spirit she'd been fighting, but the broken woman from her dream, weeping as though her heart would break. The sound of ultimate loneliness, of love twisted into something unrecognizable. I'm sorry, Clara said into the darkness. I'm sorry you hurt so much. I'm sorry love wasn't enough to save you, but it's time to let go. Let Sam go. Let yourself go. The weeping intensified. Pictures rattled on walls. Then Sam spoke, his voice rough with unshed tears. Eliza, I failed you. I see that now. I was so lost in my own grief I couldn't see yours. But this, what you've become, this isn't you. The woman I married was kind, gentle. She wouldn't want this legacy of fear. His voice broke. I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. But please, let us both find peace. A wind roared through the house. extinguishing even the fire in the hearth. In the complete darkness, Clara felt a presence, not threatening now, but infinitely sad. A cold touch on her cheek, like fingers made of mist. Then a whisper, so faint she might have imagined it. Take care of him. The wind died. Warmth crept back into the room. When Miss Morgan managed to relight a lamp, they saw the parlor transformed. Every photograph of Eliza lay face down, peaceful as closed eyes. The frost had melted, leaving only ordinary condensation, and the rose scent had faded, replaced by the honest smells of wood smoke and leather. "Is it over, Mrs.?" Patterson whispered. Clara looked at Sam, saw the wondering hope in his eyes. I think she's gone." Pastor William said a quiet prayer of blessing over the house. The other women helped Clara carefully pack Eliza's belongings, not to hide them, but to preserve them properly. They would go in the attic, Clara decided, where memories belonged. After the visitors left, Clara and Sam stood alone in the peaceful parlor. For the first time since her arrival, the house felt simply like a house, old bones and timber. Nothing more. "Stay with me tonight," Clara said. "Not in the barn. Here, in our home." Sam pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she might disappear. "Our home," he repeated, wonder in his voice. That night, they lay together in the big bed in the master bedroom, not Eliza's blue room, but the room Sam had abandoned 2 years ago. No ghosts disturbed their sleep. No roses bloomed in winter. Just two people finding their way back to love, carrying their scars but not ruled by them. In the morning, Clara woke to sunlight streaming through windows and Sam's arm around her waist. The house stood quiet, waiting to be filled with new life. She thought of Eliza, hoping the troubled woman had found peace at last. Then she turned in Sam's arms and kissed him awake, ready to begin their real marriage. The ghost was gone. The haunting was over. Now came the harder task, learning to live without shadows. The peace that had settled over the Hartley ranch lasted exactly 3 days. Clara was feeding the chickens on a gray morning when the first crack appeared, not in the supernatural calm, but in her own carefully constructed composure. A sudden wave of nausea sent her stumbling to the fence, grains scattering as she emptied her stomach into the dirt. "Just something I ate," she told herself, wiping her mouth with a shaking hand. But deep down, she knew better. She'd felt this particular sickness before, years ago in Boston. The realization sent her running, not to the house, but to the open fields beyond. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave out, collapsing near a stream swollen with spring runoff. The water rushed past, carrying bits of ice and debris, and Clara saw her reflection fractured on its surface. A mother who had failed, a woman who had saved herself instead of her child, and now, possibly, a woman carrying new life when she hadn't yet learned to forgive herself for the one lost. That's where Sam found her an hour later, sitting in the wet grass, staring at nothing. "Clara?" He dismounted quickly, alarm clear in his voice. "Mrs. Patterson said you were sick, then you disappeared." "I'm pregnant." The words came out flat, emotionless. "Or, I think I am. The signs, I remember them from before." Sam went very still. Then he was kneeling beside her, trying to take her hands, but she pulled away. "Clara, that's wonderful news." "Is it?" She laughed, but it came out cracked. "I couldn't save my first baby. Sam, I let him burn because I was too afraid to go back, too weak to—" "Stop." His voice was firm, but gentle. "Tell me what really happened that night." So she did, the words pouring out like water through a broken dam, the smoke filling the house, breaking free from the bedroom, making it to the nursery where her son, James, she'd named him James, lay in his crib. He'd been born too early, lived only 3 hours, but she'd kept his room exactly as she'd prepared it, a shrine to hope turned bitter. I reached the door, but the hallway was an inferno. The floor started giving way. I could have tried, could have crawled through the flames, but I turned back. I chose to live. Tears streamed down her face. What kind of mother chooses herself over her child, even a child already gone? Sam gathered her against him despite her resistance. A human one, a frightened one. Clara, you couldn't have saved a memory. The fire took things, not your baby. He was already safe somewhere beyond flames. You don't understand. I understand guilt. His arms tightened around her. I understand how it eats you alive, makes you question every choice. But I also understand this. You survived for a reason. Maybe this reason. His hand settled gently on her still flat stomach. Maybe our child needs a mother who knows how to fight for life, even when it's hard. Clara broke then, sobbing into his chest while he held her. The morning mist rose from the fields around them, and for a moment she could almost believe in absolution. When they finally returned to the house, Mrs. Patterson took one look at Clara's tear-stained face and Sam's protective hovering and put the pieces together. About time, she said simply, setting out the tea and ginger cookies. This house needs children again. But as the days passed, Clara's fears grew rather than diminished. She jumped at shadows, not supernatural ones now, but the ordinary ghosts of memory and doubt. She found herself standing before the blue room, drawn by something she couldn't name. Inside, afternoon light slanted through clean windows. They'd left it furnished, but not shrine-like. Just another room now. Clara sat on the bed where Eliza had died and tried to make sense of her turmoil. "You're frightened too, weren't you?" she said aloud, not sure if she was addressing Eliza's memory or herself. Frightened of failing, of not being enough, of losing everything you loved. The room remained quiet, but Clara felt a strange comfort in the silence. She began spending time there daily, sewing tiny garments and talking to the absent presence that might or might not listen. It became a ritual of sorts. Clara working through her fears stitch by stitch while speaking to a woman who'd lost her battle with those same demons. Sam found her there one evening, surrounded by half-finished baby clothes. "The hands are coming by tomorrow," he said from the doorway. "Thought I should warn you. Word's gotten out about." He gestured vaguely at her middle. "About the baby?" Clara set aside her needlework. "Let them talk. I'm tired of secrets." He entered the room, still cautiously. She noticed, as if expecting Eliza to materialize. "It's not talk I'm worried about. It's Jake's nephew, Tom Brennan." Clara's blood chilled. Brennan, as in Michael Brennan, his younger brother. He's been working the Mitchell spread, but he's got a reputation for trouble, especially regarding the circumstances of his brother's involvement here. You think he blames us for his brother's scandal? I think he's young and angry and looking for someone to blame. Sam sat beside her on the bed, Eliza's bed, where so much pain had centered. "I want you to stay close to the house tomorrow, just until I get a feel for his intentions." Clara bristled. "I won't be made a prisoner again, Sam, not by fear, not by threats, not even by your protection. I'm not trying to cage you. I'm trying to—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "How do I keep you safe without becoming him? Your first husband?" The question hung between them, raw and honest. Clara took his hand, feeling the calluses and strength there, but also the trembling uncertainty. "By trusting me to know my own limits, by standing beside me instead of in front of me." She placed his palm on her still flat belly. "By remembering that I survived before I met you. I'm not fragile, Sam. Scared, yes, but not breakable." He kissed her then, soft and careful. "Strongest woman I know," he murmured against her lips. The next morning brought a late spring storm, rain lashing the windows and turning the yard to mud. The hands arrived in dribs and drabs, shaking off water in the barn. Clara went about her normal routine, refusing to hide, though she noticed Sam staying closer than usual. It was nearly noon when she heard the commotion, raised voices from the barn, then a crash. She grabbed her shawl and rushed out, finding a crowd gathered near the horse stalls. Tom Brennan stood in the center, younger than she'd expected, maybe 19. With his brother's dark coloring but none of his polish. His clothes were mud-splattered, and he swayed slightly. Drunk, Clara realized, at midday. There she is. He pointed at Clara, words slurring. The witch who destroyed my family. My brother can't show his face in town. His wife took the children back east, all because of her. He gestured wildly at the house. First she bewitches Hartley into killing his wife. Then she comes here to finish the job. That's enough. Sam stepped between them, voice deadly quiet. Is it? Tom laughed bitterly. Everyone knows Eliza was leaving you for Michael. You couldn't stand it, so you burned her up and blamed it on accident. Now you've got a replacement already breeding? Sam moved faster than Clara could follow. One moment Tom was standing. The next, he was on the ground, Sam's fist connecting with his jaw. But Tom was younger, quicker, fueled by rage and alcohol. He rolled away and came up swinging. The fight was brutal and brief. They crashed into stall doors, scattering horses, throwing punches with the desperate fury of men with too much to prove. Clara heard herself screaming for them to stop, but the hands held her back, unwilling to interfere. It ended when Tom pulled a knife. The barn went silent except for harsh breathing. Sam stood very still, blood running from a split lip, watching the blade weave unsteadily in Tom's grip. Go ahead, Sam said quietly. Prove you're the coward your brother is. Tom's face contorted. He lunged forward, not at Sam, but at Clara. Everything happened at once. Sam moving to intercept. Clara dodging instinctively, protecting her belly. Jake in the other hand surging forward, the knife catching Sam's shirt, tearing fabric and flesh along his ribs. Then Tom was on the ground, held down by 3 ranch hands while Sam pressed a hand to his bleeding side. Clara reached him first, her shawl already off to staunch the wound. I'm fine, he said, though his face had gone pale. Just a scratch. Scratches don't bleed like that. She pressed harder, feeling the warm wetness seep through fabric. Jake, ride for Dr. Chen. Now! The next hours blurred together. Doctor, Chen arriving with his steady hands and calm manner. Sam arguing he didn't need stitches even as the doctor threaded his needle. Tom Brennan hauled off by the sheriff, still ranting about witches and murder. Clara holding Sam's hand through it all, her fear crystallizing into something harder, fiercer. That night, she helped Sam to their bed, careful of the bandages wrapping his torso. He caught her hand as she turned to leave. Stay. You need rest. I need you. His eyes were dark with more than pain. When I saw him going for you, for our child, I understood something. All this time I've been afraid of becoming like your husband, of trapping you. But the real trap is fear itself. We're both so scared of repeating the past that we're not living in the present. Clara sat on the bed's edge, careful not to jostle him. What are you saying? I'm saying I love you. Not as some mail-order solution to loneliness. Not as Eliza's replacement, but as you, Clara Whitmore, who fights ghosts and tends chickens and carries our future beneath her heart. He pulled her down for a kiss, wincing slightly. Marry me, really marry me. Not some paper arrangement, but in the church, in front of everyone. Let them all see that we're not afraid anymore. Clara's heart swelled even as tears threatened. Sam Hartley, are you proposing to me while bleeding from a knife wound? Seems as good a time as any, though I'd get on one knee if I could manage it. She laughed through her tears, kissing him carefully. Yes, you wonderful, stubborn fool. They lay together in the dark, Sam's hand resting protectively over where their child grew. No ghosts disturbed them, not Eliza's, not their own. Just the sound of rain on the roof and their breathing gradually synchronizing. I'm still scared, Clara whispered. Me too, but maybe that's all right. Maybe being scared together is better than being fearless alone. She thought of Eliza then, of loneliness so profound it burned everything down rather than face it. That wouldn't be their story. They had each other now, scars and all. They had a future taking shape one day at a time. Outside, the storm began to clear, stars appearing through breaking clouds. The house stood solid around them, no longer haunted by anything but the ordinary ghosts everyone carries. And in the darkness, new life grew, fragile, uncertain, but stubbornly persistent. Clara fell asleep to Sam's heartbeat. steady beneath her ear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Tom Brennan's family might seek revenge. The pregnancy would advance, bringing its own fears. The ranch would demand attention. The town would gossip. Life would insist on being lived. But tonight, they had this, each other, their child, and a hard-won peace. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. The morning they decided to cleanse the house completely dawned bright and clear, with a warm Chinook wind melting the last stubborn patches of snow. Clara stood in the doorway of the blue room, sleeves rolled up, hair tied back with determination. "We start here," she announced to Sam and Mrs. Patterson. "Every corner, every shadow. If we're truly going to make this house new, we leave nothing untouched." Sam hefted a bucket of whitewash. "You sure about this? Painting over her walls?" "Not painting over," Clara corrected. "Painting new. There's a difference." They worked in companionable rhythm, clearing out the last remnants of Eliza's presence. The scorched floorboards where she died were carefully removed, replaced with fresh pine that Sam had milled himself. The walls, once papered in dark damask, were stripped bare and washed clean. As Clara cleaned out the closet where she'd found the letters, her fingers caught on something else, a small leather journal wedged behind a loose board. She sat back on her heels, debating whether to read it. Some secrets, perhaps, were better left buried, but curiosity won. She opened the journal to find Eliza's handwriting, more controlled than in the frantic letters, dating back to the early years of her marriage. April 3rd, 1876. "Sam brought me wildflowers today. He said they reminded him of my laugh, bright and unexpected. I pressed one between these pages to remember this feeling, this certainty that I am loved." Clara's throat tightened. She flipped forward, watching joy slowly curdle into desperation across the pages. October 15th, 1879. "Lost another. Sam won't speak of it. He disappears into the range for days, leaving me alone with the silence. I know he blames me. How could he not? I am hollow, broken, a vessel that cannot hold life." December 2nd, 1880. "Michael kissed me today by the river. I should feel guilty, but I feel alive for the first time in months. Is it wrong to want someone who looks at me and sees a woman, not a failure?" Clara closed the journal, understanding flooding through her. She found Sam in the hallway, patching a crack in the wall. "I found her journal," she said simply, handing it to him. He looked at it as if it might bite. "I don't want to read it." "Then don't, but I think we should keep it. Not hidden, not enshrined, just kept. She was part of your story. Sam, pretending otherwise honors no one." He set down his tools and pulled Clara close. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "Luck had nothing to do with it," she murmured against his chest, feeling the bandages still wrapped around his ribs from Tom Brennan's attack. "We found each other because we were ready to be found." That afternoon, while Sam worked outside, Clara tackled the attic. It was a treasure trove of family history. Photographs of Sam's parents, his father's Civil War uniform, baby clothes that must have been Sam's own. In a cedar chest, she found something that made her gasp. A wedding dress, ivory silk yellowed with age but still beautiful. That was my mother's. Clara spun to find Sam climbing the attic stairs, dust motes dancing around him in the afternoon light. She was married in it in 1847, back in Missouri before they came west. He fingered the delicate lace. "Always thought Eliza would wear it, but she wanted something grander from Denver." "It's beautiful," Clara breathed. Would you like to wear it? For our wedding?" His voice turned uncertain. "If it's too much, too connected to the past, I'd be honored." She stood, holding the dress against herself. "Your mother, starting a new life in a new place. Seems fitting." They spent the rest of the day going through the attic treasures, Sam sharing stories Clara had never heard. His father's struggle to establish the ranch, his mother's determination to bring civilization to the wilderness through books and music, the cholera outbreak that took them both within days of each other. "I was so angry," Sam admitted, sitting on a dusty trunk. 15 years old and suddenly alone with a ranch to run. I think that's why I was so desperate to make things work with Eliza. I wanted family again. And now? Clara asked, settling beside him. Now I understand the difference between wanting family and building one. His hand found hers. We're building something new. Clara, not trying to resurrect the past. As if in agreement, the baby moved for the first time, just a flutter, like butterfly wings, but unmistakable. Clara gasped, pressing Sam's hand to her belly. Did you feel that? His eyes widened with wonder. Was that our child, our future? Tears pricked her eyes. Oh, Sam, it's real. It's really real. They sat in the dusty attic, surrounded by artifacts of loss and endurance, feeling new life assert itself. The house creaked around them, but it was just the settling of old wood. Nothing more. As spring progressed toward summer, changes came rapidly. Clara's belly began to round, impossible to hide beneath her dresses. Sam started construction on a nursery, not upstairs where memories lingered, but a sunny addition off their bedroom where they could hear every sound. The town's attitude shifted too. Perhaps it was the arrest of Tom Brennan, now awaiting trial for assault. Perhaps it was the obvious joy Sam radiated despite his usual reserve. Or perhaps it was Clara herself, refusing to bow to whispers, showing up at church with her head high and her condition evident. Let them talk, she told Mrs. Chen during a prenatal visit. I've learned shame is just another kind of prison. The doctor's wife smiled. You've changed him. You know, Sam, I haven't seen him this alive since before Eliza's troubles began. We've changed each other, Clara corrected. That's what love does, isn't it? Changes us into better versions of ourselves. One evening, as Clara worked in her newly established garden, she heard riders approaching. Sam emerged from the barn, rifle in hand, still wary after the Brennan incident. But the riders were women, Miss Morgan, Mrs. Chen, and surprisingly, several others from town. We've brought something, Miss Morgan announced, dismounting with a large basket. Call it a peace offering. Inside were baby clothes, hand-stitched and beautiful. Blankets, bonnets, tiny socks knitted with care. Clara's eyes filled as she touched each piece. I don't understand, she managed. After all the talk, the suspicion— We were wrong, said Mrs. Abernathy, the mayor's wife who'd been coldest to Clara. We let fear and old gossip guide us. But seeing you these past months, seeing how you've brought life back to this place, well, we wanted to welcome you properly. They stayed for tea, the parlor filling with feminine chatter for the first time in years. Sam retreated to the porch, but Clara caught him smiling through the window. The house, once tomb-silent, rang with laughter. As the women prepared to leave, Mrs. Chen pulled Clara aside. There's something else. My grandmother used to say that houses remember joy as strongly as sorrow. All this happiness you're creating, it's like writing over old text with new words. That night, Clara shared the thought with Sam as they lay in bed, her back pressed to his chest, his hands splayed over her growing belly. New words, he murmured. I like that. What shall we write? Love, Clara said immediately. Safety, laughter, arguments about nothing and making up after, burnt dinners and perfect mornings, children tracking mud through the halls. Children plural. She could hear his smile, God willing. She turned in his arms to face him. I want to fill this house with the life, Sam. So much life that there's no room for shadows. He kissed her deeply, and she felt that familiar spark ignite between them. Even pregnant, even tired from the day's work, desire hummed through her veins. They moved together with practiced tenderness, careful of her changing body but no less passionate for it. Afterward, as Sam slept, Clara rose to use the necessary passing the window. She paused. There in the garden stood a figure in white. But for once, Clara felt no fear. The woman, Eliza, looked younger, softer. She bent to touch the new plants Clara had set, and where her fingers passed, The leaves seemed to shimmer. Their eyes met through the glass. Eliza placed a hand over her own flat belly, then gestured to Clara's rounded one, a benediction. Perhaps, or simply acknowledgement from one woman to another. We loved. We lost. We endured. Then she was gone. Not in a dramatic vanishing, but a gentle fading, like morning mist touched by sun. Clara knew with bone-deep certainty that this was the last time. Eliza had finally found her peace. "What are you looking at?" Sam's voice, drowsy from the bed. "The garden," Clara said, returning to his warmth. "Just checking my garden." Summer arrived in full glory, painting the valley in shades of gold and green. Clara's belly grew round and firm, the baby's movement stronger each day. She waddled more than walked now, but refused to slow down, much to Sam's mingled amusement and concern. "You're nesting," he accused, finding her scrubbing the kitchen floor on hands and knees. "Doc Chen said you should be resting. I'll rest when everything's ready." But she allowed him to help her stand, groaning slightly. "This child is riding low. Won't be long now." Fear flickered in his eyes, the same fear that had haunted him since she'd announced her pregnancy. "Clara, if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong." She cupped his face, making him meet her gaze. "I'm not Eliza. Sam, this isn't that story. We're writing new words. Remember?" He gathered her close, as much as her belly would allow. "I love you, both of you. So much it terrifies me." "Good," she whispered. "Love should terrify us a little. It means it matters." The pain started 3 days later, just as dawn broke over the mountains. Clara woke to a low, deep ache and the certainty that their waiting was over. She lay still for a moment, hand on her belly, preparing herself for what lay ahead. "Sam," she said quietly, "it's time." What followed was a blur of controlled chaos. Sam riding heifer leather to fetch Mrs. Chen and the midwife, Mrs. Patterson boiling water and preparing clean linens. Clara pacing the bedroom, breathing through contractions that grew stronger with each passing hour. "You're doing beautifully," the midwife assured her as afternoon stretched toward evening. "Baby's positioned well, just needs time." Time. Clara gripped the bedpost as another wave crashed over her. In Boston, her first labor had been quick, too quick for the baby's tiny lungs. This slow, steady progress felt like redemption. Sam refused to be banished to the porch, as was customary. He stayed at Clara's side, letting her grip his hands until her nails left marks, murmuring encouragement when she faltered. "I can see the head," the midwife announced as sunset painted the room gold. "Next push. Clara, your baby's almost here." With a final effort that seemed to pull her soul inside out, Clara delivered their child into the world. A lusty cry filled the room, strong, healthy, alive. "A daughter," the midwife said, placing the baby on Clara's chest. "Perfect as a June morning." Clara looked down at the tiny face, red and scrunched and absolutely beautiful. Dark hair like Sam's, but her nose, her chin, 10 fingers, 10 toes, breathing steady and sure. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming. "Oh, hello." Sam touched the baby's head with trembling fingers. "She's so small, so perfect." His voice broke. "Clara, we have a daughter." "What will you call her?" "Mrs." Patterson asked, openly weeping in the doorway. Clara looked at Sam, seeing the same thought in his eyes. "Hope," she said. "Hope, Elizabeth Hartley." "Elizabeth, Mrs." Chen raised an eyebrow. "For the woman who loved this house first," Clara explained. "But hope for what she becomes. New life from old sorrow." As if in response to her name, the baby opened her eyes, gray like her father's but bright with possibility. Outside, the evening star appeared in a lavender sky. The house stood peaceful around them, filled with the sound of new life taking its place in the world. Sam kissed Clara's forehead, then their daughter's. "New words," he murmured. "The best words." Clara leaned into his strength, their child safe between them. Through the window, she could see her garden blooming in the twilight. Tomorrow she would walk there with hope, introducing her to the world that waited. But tonight, this was enough. Her family complete, her heart full, her ghosts finally laid to rest. The Hartley house had remembered sorrow long enough. Now it would learn joy. The trial of Tom Brennan took place on a sweltering July day, when the courthouse felt like an oven and tempers ran as hot as the weather. Clara insisted on attending despite Sam's protests, baby Hope sleeping peacefully in her arms. "I need to face this," she told him as they entered the packed courtroom. "No more hiding from hard things." The proceedings were swift. Tom, sobered by 3 months in jail, looked younger than his 19 years. When asked to speak in his own defense, his voice cracked. "I was drunk, angry. I blamed them for my brother's shame, for my family falling apart." He looked directly at Clara and Sam. "But the truth is, Michael made his own choices, as did I. I'm sorry for what I done." The judge sentenced him to 6 months hard labor. Time already served to count toward it. As the courtroom cleared, Michael Brennan himself approached them. Clara had never seen Eliza's former lover up close. Handsome in a weak sort of way, with haunted eyes. "I owe you both an apology," he said quietly. "For my part in the difficulties, for my brother's actions, for everything." Sam's jaw tightened, but Clara placed a gentle hand on his arm. "We've all paid for our choices, Mr. Brennan. Perhaps it's time to let the past bury itself." Michael nodded, relief evident. "I'm taking Tom back east when he's released. Fresh start for both of us. I pray you find happiness here." After he left, Sam turned to Clara with wonder. "How do you do that? Forgive so easily?" "It's not easy," she admitted, shifting Hope to her other arm. "But carrying hate is like carrying stones. Eventually, you have to set them down, or they'll bury you." That evening, they returned to find an unexpected gift on their porch, a hand-carved cradle with a note, "For new beginnings, T. Brennan." "From the jail workshop," Sam said, running his hands over the smooth wood. "Boy's got talent." They placed Hope in her new cradle that night, watching her sleep in the soft lamplight. The house around them felt different now, lighter, as if the very walls had exhaled years of held breath. As summer deepened, Clara established new routines. Mornings with Hope in the garden, afternoons helping Sam with ranch work while Mrs. Patterson minded the baby. The house filled with the sounds of normal life. Hope's cries and coos, Sam's laughter, the constant stream of visitors drawn by the baby like flowers to sun. One August afternoon, Clara was teaching a group of town children their letters on the porch when an elegant carriage pulled up. A woman stepped out, 50s, expensively dressed, with an air of Eastern refinement. "I'm looking for Mrs. Clara Whitmore," she announced. Clara's blood chilled. That name, her maiden name, belonged to a life she'd left behind. "I'm Clara Hartley now." The woman studied her with sharp eyes. "I am Mrs. Margaret Whitmore, your late husband's mother." The children scattered as Clara stood, instinctively moving to block the doorway where Hope napped. "What do you want?" "To see my grandchild, of course. The one you stole from Boston." "There was no child," Clara began, then stopped. "You knew?" "About the baby." "Of course I knew. Thomas wrote of the boy's birth, brief as it was." Margaret's composure cracked slightly. 3 hours. He said, dark hair like his father. Clara felt Sam's presence before she saw him, coming from the barn with Jake and 2 other hands. He took in the scene, Clara's rigid posture, the stranger's aggressive stance, and moved to his wife's side. "Is there a problem here?" Margaret looked him over dismissively. "So this is the man you replaced my son with. How quickly you moved on." "Your son was a monster," Clara said quietly. "He beat me, terrorized me, the night he died. He'd locked me in our room after breaking 2 of my ribs." "Lies," Margaret hissed. "Thomas was a good man, a loving husband. You drove him to desperate measures with your willfulness, then left him to burn." "That's enough." Sam's voice carried the same dangerous quiet it had with Tom Brennan. "You'll not speak to my wife that way on my land." Margaret drew herself up. I have legal rights. A grandparent's claim. To a child who died 2 years ago? Clara felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. James, yes, I named him James. Lived 3 hours. He's buried in Grove Street Cemetery, if you truly wish to pay your respects. But you have no claim here. Hope is not your blood. The older woman's face crumbled. For a moment, Clara saw past the anger to the grief beneath, a mother mourning a son, a grandmother robbed of possibility. Then Margaret's mask slammed back into place. You killed them both, Thomas and the baby. I hope you burn in hell for it. She swept back to her carriage, leaving Clara shaking in Sam's arms. From inside came Hope's cry, as if sensing the disturbance. I'll get her, Mrs. Patterson said gently, having witnessed everything from the doorway. That night, Clara couldn't settle. She paced the nursery with Hope, singing lullabies that caught in her throat. Sam found her there at midnight, tears finally flowing. What if she's right? Clara whispered. What if I'm a killer? I survived when they didn't. Stop. Sam took Hope, settling her in the cradle, then pulled Clara into their bedroom. Look at me. Really look at me. She met his eyes, seeing love and fierce protection there. You survived because you're strong, because somewhere deep down, you knew you deserved better than pain and fear. He cupped her face. That woman came here hoping to wound you, to drag you back into guilt. Don't let her. She lost her son, a son who chose violence, who created the circumstances of his own death through cruelty. Sam's voice gentled. I'm sorry for her loss. Truly, but that doesn't give her the right to torture you. Clara collapsed against him, letting years of careful control finally break. She cried for baby James, for the young woman she'd been, even for Thomas, not the man he'd become, but who he might have been in a different life. Sam held her through it all, solid and steadfast. When the storm passed, Clara felt emptied out but cleaner somehow. No more, she said. No more ghosts. Not Eliza's, not Thomas's, not anyone's. No more, Sam agreed, kissing her forehead. Word of Margaret Whitmore's visit spread through town quickly. Clara expected judgment, whispers about her past. Instead, she found support. Women who'd been cold before now stopped her in the street to share their own stories of difficult marriages, lost children, choices made in desperation. We all have our secrets, Mrs. Abernathy told her one Sunday after church. Yours just had the misfortune to follow you here. Even Pastor Williams offered unexpected comfort. God judges the heart, not the circumstances, he said. And your heart, Mrs. Hartley, is clearly good. As autumn arrived, painting the valley in shades of gold and rust, Clara felt something shift inside her. The weight she'd carried for so long, guilt, fear, shame, began to lift like morning fog. She threw herself into preparing for winter, preserving vegetables from her garden, helping Sam ready the ranch for snow. Hope grew round and bright-eyed, beginning to babble and reach for everything. Sam built her a high chair, spent evenings making toys while Clara sewed winter clothes. The house filled with warmth and purpose. One October evening, Clara was writing in what had been Eliza's diary, now repurposed as a household journal. She recorded recipes, Hope's milestones, daily observations. As she wrote, she became aware of Sam reading over her shoulder. Hope laughed today, he read aloud. Real laughter, not just smiles. Sam was making faces while feeding her mashed carrots. I thought my heart would burst from happiness. You're quite the writer. Clara blushed. Just recording our days, so we don't forget. As if we could forget any of this. He sat beside her, pulling her close. You've given me everything. Clara, a daughter, a real home, a reason to wake up each morning with joy instead of duty. You gave me the same, she said. A place to heal, love without conditions, the chance to be a mother again. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire crackle. Through the window, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Hope slept peacefully in her cradle nearby. making small sounds of contentment. "I've been thinking," Sam said eventually, "about expanding the house, not just for more children, if we're blessed, but, well, what would you think about taking in others? Women like you were needing somewhere safe to start over?" Clara turned to stare at him. "You mean like a refuge? The ranch is big enough. We could add rooms, maybe a separate building eventually. Nobody should have to answer a mail-order bride advertisement out of desperation." He looked uncertain. "Is it too much? Too ambitious?" Clara kissed him thoroughly. "It's perfect. A way to make meaning from pain." They talked late into the night, planning and dreaming. The Hartley Ranch as more than just their home, as hope for other women trapped by circumstance. Clara thought of her desperate flight from Boston, of the fear that had driven her to answer a stranger's advertisement. What if there had been another option, a place of safety without the risk of another bad marriage? "We'll need help," she said. "Money for building, connections for finding women who need us." "I've got savings," Sam said. "And Jake's wife knows people in Denver, works with a church group that helps difficult situations. We could start small." Hope stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of protest. Clara rose to check on her, adjusting her blanket, looking down at her daughter's peaceful face. She felt the rightness of Sam's proposal. They'd been given second chances. Why not pass that gift along? The first woman arrived just before Christmas, sent by Mrs. Chen, who'd heard of her situation through medical circles. Anna Kowalski, 18 and Polish, speaking little English, visibly pregnant and terrified. Her husband had died in a mining accident. His family had cast her out, and she had nowhere to go. Clara settled her in what had been Eliza's blue room, now painted sunny yellow with white curtains. "You're safe here," she told Anna, using gestures to bridge the language gap. "Stay as long as you need," Anna cried, clutching Clara's hands. Over the following days, she proved herself eager to help, cooking Polish dishes that filled the house with new scents, helping with Hope despite her own growing belly. "See," Sam said one evening, watching Anna teach Hope a Polish lullaby. "Already becoming family?" Christmas brought unexpected joy. The house, once shrouded in gloom, now glowed with warmth and light. Clara decorated with pine boughs and ribbons. Anna contributed paper ornaments from her homeland, and Sam surprised them all with a tree cut from the mountain. On Christmas Eve, as snow fell soft outside, they gathered in the parlor, Sam, Clara, Hope, Anna, Mrs. Patterson, Jake and his wife, even some of the ranch hands. They sang carols, shared stories, passed hope from lap to lap like a blessing. "To new beginnings," Sam toasted with apple cider. "To family," Clara added, "in all its forms." As the evening wound down, Clara stepped onto the porch for a moment of quiet. The snow had stopped, leaving the world pristine and hushed. In the distance, mountains stood like guardians under a star-filled sky. She felt rather than heard Sam join her, his arms coming around her from behind. "No regrets?" he asked softly. Clara leaned back against his solid warmth. "None. You? Only that it took so long to find you." They stood together, watching their valley sleep under its blanket of snow. Inside, Hope's laughter mingled with Anna's singing. The house that had once held such sorrow now overflowed with life and possibility. "Look," Sam said, pointing to a shooting star streaking across the sky. "Make a wish." Clara closed her eyes, but found she had nothing left to wish for. Everything she needed was right here: love, purpose, family, home. The ghosts were gone, the past reconciled, the future spreading before them bright with promise. When she opened her eyes, Sam was watching her with that expression of wonder he still got sometimes, as if he couldn't quite believe his luck. "What did you wish for?" he asked. "More of this," she said simply. "Just more of this." He kissed her then, there on the porch of their haunted no more house, while snow began to fall again and their daughter called for them from inside. It was perfect in its ordinariness, precious in its peace. They went back inside together, leaving the ghosts to the wind and snow, carrying warmth and light with them into their home. Spring arrived with a vengeance that year, bringing floods that turned creeks into rivers and made roads impassable. The Hartley Ranch, situated on higher ground, became an island of safety in a valley transformed by water and mud. It was during this tumultuous season that Anna gave birth to her son, with Clara and Mrs. Chen attending. "He's perfect," Clara whispered, placing the baby in Anna's arms. "What will you call him?" "Stefan," Anna said, tears streaming. "For my husband, and Samuel for middle name, for the man who gave us shelter." Sam, pacing outside like any expectant father, was moved to speechlessness when told Hope, now toddling on sturdy legs, peered at the baby with intense curiosity, patting his head with surprising gentleness. The success with Anna spread through quiet channels. By summer, they'd added 2 more rooms to the house and welcomed 3 more women: a young widow from California, a girl fleeing an arranged marriage, and an older woman escaping years of servitude to cruel relatives. Each brought their own skills and stories, transforming the ranch into something unprecedented on the frontier. Clara established routines that gave structure without confinement. Morning chores shared by all, afternoons for personal pursuits, sewing, reading, tending children. Evenings brought communal dinners where English mixed with Polish, Spanish, and German, creating a babel of hope. "You've built something remarkable," Pastor Williams observed during a visit. "A family not of blood, but of choice." "We've all built it," Clara corrected, watching Hope chase butterflies while Anna's Stefan slept in a basket nearby. Each woman who comes adds something new. But success brought scrutiny. Not everyone approved of the Hartley Ranch's transformation. Some saw it as harboring fallen women, others as disrupting the social order. The criticism reached a head when Marcus Donnelly, the shopkeeper's son and now mayor, paid an official visit. "There are concerns," he said stiffly, refusing Clara's offer of coffee, "about the nature of your establishment." "Establishment?" Sam's voice carried warning. "This is our home, a home that houses numerous unattached women, some of questionable reputation. Every woman here is of excellent reputation." Clara interrupted. "They've simply faced hardships that required courage to overcome. If that makes them questionable, then perhaps it's the questions that need examining." Marcus flushed. "The town council has discussed implementing regulations on private property, on acts of Christian charity." Sam stood, using his full height. "I think you'll find no law against kindness, Mayor Donnelly." The mayor left, but Clara knew this wasn't over. That evening, she called a meeting of all the women. "We need to be above reproach," she said, "not because we've done anything wrong, but because the world watches us differently. We document everything: who comes, why, where they go when they leave. We maintain connections with the churches, the doctor, the legitimate authorities. We give them no ammunition." Sarah, the widow from California, raised her hand. "What if we formalized it, became an actual organization with papers and everything?" "The Hartley Haven," suggested Maria, the girl who'd fled the arranged marriage, "for women seeking sanctuary." And so it became official. With help from a sympathetic lawyer in Denver, they established the Hartley Haven Society, complete with board members, Mrs. Chen and Mrs. Patterson among them, and a charter stating their purpose: to provide temporary sanctuary and support for women in transition, enabling them to build independent, dignified lives. The formalization helped quiet some critics, but it was an unexpected event that truly shifted public opinion. One autumn night, a fire broke out at the Donnelly store. It spread quickly in the dry weather, threatening to consume the entire block. Sam organized the ranch hands to help fight it, but it was the women of Hartley Haven who made the difference. They formed bucket brigades, evacuated neighboring buildings, and tended the injured with skill born of hard experience. Anna, who'd learned firefighting helping her late husband's mining crew, directed efforts that saved the church. Clara worked alongside Dr. Chen treating burns and smoke inhalation. Even young Maria proved heroic, rushing into a burning building to save the elderly Mrs. Pritchard, who'd been trapped. When dawn came, half the town stood saved by the efforts of those questionable women. Mayor Donnelly himself, his own home spared by their intervention, stood humbled. "I owe you an apology," he told Clara as she bandaged his burned hands, "and a debt of gratitude. We're all neighbors." Clara said simply, "That's what neighbors do." The fire marked a turning point. Donations began arriving: fabric for the women's sewing work, books for the growing library, even lumber for the new dormitory Sam planned. The Haven became not a scandal but a source of town pride, proof of civilization's best impulses flourishing on the frontier. By winter, they housed 8 women and 3 children besides Hope and Stefan. The main house rang with voices and laughter. Sam, initially overwhelmed by the feminine invasion, had adapted with good humor. "Never thought I'd know so much about proper tea service," he told Clara one evening as they watched Hope play with the other children. "Or that my daughter would speak 3 languages before she could properly say horse." "Are you happy?" Clara asked, though she knew the answer. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He pulled her close. "Though I do miss having you to myself sometimes." She snuggled into his warmth. "Perhaps we should build our own cabin up the ridge, a retreat when things get too crowded." "Now you're thinking." He kissed her temple. "Especially if we're blessed with more children of our own." Clara smiled secretively. She'd been waiting for the right moment to tell him. She was pregnant again. Tonight, she decided, after dinner, when they could steal a moment alone. But dinner brought unexpected drama. A new arrival, young, terrified, and clutching a bundle that proved to be a baby barely a week old. The girl, Lucy, couldn't have been more than 16. "Please," she gasped, collapsing into Clara's arms. "They want to take her. Say I'm not fit, not married. Please don't let them take my baby." Clara settled her by the fire while Sam sent Jake riding for the sheriff, not to arrest Lucy, but to warn of possible pursuit. Sure enough, within hours riders arrived. Lucy's father and brothers, demanding her return. "She's our blood," the father declared. "You've no right to keep her. She's a woman grown, with a child of her own." Clara responded, standing firm despite the men's threatening postures. "She has the right to choose her path. Women don't have rights," one brother spat. "Especially not girls who shame their families. On my land, they do," Sam said quietly, backed by Jake and the ranch hands. "And you're on my land." The standoff might have turned violent, but Sheriff Morrison arrived, a fair man who'd seen the good the Haven did. "Miss Lucy's of age," he stated. "If she chooses to stay, that's her right. You men best head home before someone does something foolish." They left, but not without threats of legal action, of bringing real law to bear. Clara knew this wasn't over. That night, as she finally told Sam about the new baby coming, she also voiced her fears. "What if they find some way to shut us down? What if—" "Then we fight," Sam said firmly, joy at her news mixing with determination. "We've fought ghosts and gossip and our own demons. We can fight this too." The legal challenge came from an unexpected source, not Lucy's family, but from Margaret Whitmore, Thomas's mother, who'd allied with those opposing the Haven. She claimed Clara was an unfit influence, running a house of ill repute, and demanded investigation. The hearing in Denver was set for spring. Clara prepared meticulously, gathering testimonials from every woman they'd helped, character references from respected citizens, financial records proving their legitimacy. The night before leaving for Denver, Clara walked through the house she'd once feared. Every room held purpose now. The blue room where Eliza had died housed Anna and Stefan. The parlor where furniture had flown sheltered evening lessons. The attic stored supplies for women starting new lives. She paused at Hope's room, watching her daughters sleep. At 2, Hope was fearless and bright, switching languages mid-sentence, bossing the other children with benevolent tyranny. Beside her crib stood the new cradle Sam had made, waiting for its occupant. "Nervous?" Sam asked, joining her. "Terrified," Clara admitted. "So much depends on this. Whatever happens, We'll face it together." He rested his hand on her growing belly. "All of us." The Denver courthouse was imposing, all marble and mahogany. Margaret Whitmore sat with her lawyers, radiating cold fury. The judge, an elderly man with sharp eyes, listened as accusations flew. "This woman," Margaret's lawyer proclaimed, "abandoned her dying child, may have contributed to her husband's death, and now corrupts other women with her radical notions." Objection. Clara's lawyer interrupted. "Mrs. Hartley's past has been investigated and cleared. We're here to discuss the Haven, not rehash tragedy." The judge allowed testimony to proceed. One by one, women told their stories. Anna spoke of finding safety and purpose. Sarah described learning to read and write, getting work as a seamstress. Maria, trembling but determined, explained how the Haven saved her from forced marriage at 14. But it was Lucy who turned the tide, holding her baby. She faced the courtroom with quiet dignity. "My family wanted to give my daughter away, said I was ruined, worthless. Mrs. Hartley told me I was strong, that my love for my baby mattered more than their shame." She looked directly at Margaret. "I'm sorry you lost your son, ma'am, but Clara didn't take him from you. She saved me and my little girl from losing each other." The judge's decision was swift. The Hartley Haven was not only legal but commendable. He dismissed all charges and warned against further harassment. Margaret left without a word. But Clara saw something shift in her rigid posture, perhaps the beginning of acceptance, or at least exhaustion. They returned to the ranch to find celebration in full swing. Banners reading "Welcome Home" stretched across the porch. Every woman and child waited to embrace them. "We won," Clara announced unnecessarily, and cheers erupted. That night, after the celebrating died down, Clara and Sam walked to the ridge overlooking their valley. The ranch spread below them, house glowing with lamplight, gardens ready for spring planting, new dormitory framework reaching skyward. "Remember when you first arrived?" Sam asked. "Scared, alone, running from ghosts, and found more ghosts waiting." Clara laughed. "But we exorcised them all." "With love," he said softly. "You taught me that. Love drives out fear, breaks chains, builds futures." Clara leaned into him, feeling the baby move within her. Hope would have a sibling soon. The Haven would welcome more women. Their family, biological and chosen, would continue growing. "No more ghosts," she said, echoing words from months past. "No," Sam agreed, turning her for a kiss. "Only life." Below them, windows glowed like stars brought to earth. Somewhere, a woman sang a lullaby in a language Clara was learning. Children's laughter echoed across the yard. The house that had once harbored such sorrow now sheltered so much joy. They stood together until cold drove them inside, back to warmth and light and family. The Hartley Ranch had become what Clara never dared dream, not just a haven from the past, but a beacon for the future. As spring touched the valley with green promise, Clara gave birth to their son, easily this time, surrounded by women who'd become sisters. They named him James Samuel, honoring both the child lost and the love found. Hope announced proudly to everyone that she had a brother now, and her job was to teach him everything. The other children gathered around the new baby with wonder, this living symbol of hope renewed. Sam, holding his son while Hope perched on his knee, looked at Clara with eyes bright with tears. "Thank you," he whispered, "for all of this." Clara smiled, exhausted but triumphant. Around them, their extended family bustled, cooking, cleaning, tending children, living full lives. The house embraced them all, its walls strong with purpose, its rooms bright with possibility. No more ghosts indeed, only love, multiplied and spreading, turning a house of haunting into a home of hope. And in that home, two people who'd found each other across miles and tragedy built something larger than themselves, a legacy of healing that would outlive them both. The mail-order bride who'd arrived in fear had become the architect of futures. The rancher trapped in guilt had become a pillar of community. Together, they'd written new words over old sorrow, proving that love, true love, could indeed conquer all, even ghosts. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, redemption, and second chances in the Wild West. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect across the miles, just as Clara and Sam did. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more tales of frontier romance and courage. What did you think of Clara's journey? Share your thoughts. I read every comment and love hearing how these stories touch your hearts.